Well, greetings from Danville, Kentucky. We are Center College, and we are nestled sort of in beautiful scenery in the heart of the Bluegrass State. Center is a small private liberal arts and science institution, nationally ranked, and we are providing a nice intimate setting for our students to really grow academically and personally. Our enrollment is about 1,400 undergraduate students, about 50-50 in-state to out-of-state and outside the world. Those students come to us from all different places. Average class size of 18. We cap classes around 30, and our student-to-faculty ratio is 10-1. We're highly residential. We feel like there's no clear divide between necessarily what's academic and what is social. There's a lot of positive energy that's transferred between all of those different realms for our students. And in all of our academic programs, we really want our students to take full advantage of high impact and transformational learning opportunities through independent research, collaborative research with professors, internships, and also study abroad. So I'm delighted to have these three individuals with me today. They have really maximized their opportunities here. We cannot be more proud of them as students and individuals. And I'm just really excited for you to hear from them and learn about their experience as they have blossomed into global citizens. So we're ready to get started. Brittany, we good to go? Okay. All right. Let's start with the first question. I think it would be great for everybody to learn a little bit about how you decided on locations and why those locations appealed to you. So Digna, kick us off and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So my name is Digna. I'm a senior here at Center College. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. And when I came to visit Center, I was really fascinated by their study abroad opportunities. And we have a variety of opportunities to study abroad for semester-long programs. And the one that drew my attention was the China program in Shanghai. So my family is originally from Honduras. So I grew up speaking Spanish, and I took Spanish all through elementary and high school. So I never really had the opportunity to learn a new language. So that's why I wanted to go to China and try and diversify my abilities to maybe speak to a greater population of people. So when I chose China, even before I got admitted to Center, I knew that it would give me the opportunity to expand my horizons and talk to a population that shared a different cultural experience and values. So that was my choice in China to diversify my speaking abilities.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 4 months.
I'm Louisville, Kentucky, but I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. For me, I chose Strasbourg, France as my study abroad place. And Strasbourg was a place that I really wanted to go to because of like the language experience that I had. I've been taking French. I took 2 years in high school of French, and then I continued once I got here at Center. And like the French language has been something that I've always been interested in, but it also intimidated me just because like I've never had to like, like you're learning it in class, but I really wanted that human connection. So like being able to go to Strasbourg gave me that connection. Like we're constantly speaking French every day.
So we were discussing an ideal timetable for students to study abroad. And it may vary from school to school, but I think these students have some good insight on what was ideal for them. So Dahaba, let's start with you.
Yeah. I think the best time to study abroad would be like during either your sophomore or junior year. I know a few of my friends who went their sophomore year, and like in your sophomore year, you're still trying to figure out like, at least at Center College, you're trying to figure out what major you want to do, just like what your passions are and things like that. So I think in terms of that, like it is a good time to like step away from campus and just try to figure out like how you fit into like this like global community and like even like just like domestic community. But for myself, I studied abroad my junior year, and that also seemed to be beneficial for me because like I took a semester or a school year to kind of figure out like what I was interested in, just like my major wise, and like what I wanted to like kind of benefit from a study abroad program. And like being able to go in my junior year, I was in Europe at a time when I felt like I had like that, like I had more confidence, I had more like independence and things like that. So then it like truly allowed for me to like appreciate where I was at and what I was learning because I had taken like classes that prepared me for my trip. So like I think between those 2 semesters or those 2 years would be the ideal time.
Great. So I heard some personal growth comments in there, confidence, I think sense of adventure is great. So Drew, looking back on your experience, how do you think you grew as an individual from that?
Well, I would say that definitely independence played, my personal independence played a big factor into it, because even like coming to center, I'm not that far away from home. So like even for someone like that's traveling far away from home to go to college in itself, it was kind of different because I could still lean back on my hometown like connections and everything. So, and it being with Greece being the first time I went abroad, it was really, that was kind of like a testing phase for me, because I wanted to see that, you know, that I could do it, even if it was for a shorter span. And then like in Greece, I thrived. We kind of moved with the group in that trip specifically, because that was kind of like, we would stay in like a city and then we would move together. So everything we did was kind of like scheduled in for us as to like where we would go, and like sometimes like for our dinners together where we would eat at the end of the day and everything. So that was kind of like a step out of center where I was still here and within like everything that I knew and get my own routine, while I was kind of still doing that in a place that was different. And then stepping from that to the longer semester trip in London, that was not as structured in terms of having like where we go and what we do during the day. So, and we were like living in apartments on our own. So the whole like figuring out what you wanted to eat, you know, that struggle, especially in some place where you're not familiar with the maybe the local like brands of food and the different styles of that way. That was definitely like a big thing for me, because I was able to like see myself thrive in a place where I was like disconnected from everything that I ever like everything that I've ever been on before.
So confidence and independence. Digna,
Yeah.
what did you learn?
Well, so I was in Shanghai and I interned with a nonprofit that worked with a population that was experiencing homelessness. And even within the community, many of the people we were located around didn't know or weren't familiar with the issues. So I realized how disconnected you could be in your own community. And then I reflected on my time here at Center and even my time at home, and how some of the resources, even in my local communities, were somehow, I was oblivious to them. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to support a community abroad. So that was something that really impacted my time back at Center. It allowed me and pushed me to expand beyond the Center bubble and go out into Danville and meet new people and community partners that help support Danville and Boyle County.
Kind of expands your concept of community in
Right.
a lot of ways, doesn't it? Great. So, so you have done different places, different language requirements, different considerations. How did each one of you prepare? You know, the months preceding your programs abroad. How did you prepare yourselves?
I can start. So because I already knew that Mandarin was going to be something that was going to sort of direct my abilities to navigate in Shanghai, I started downloaded applications on my phone, like Duolingo or Mango, to help me prepare for my trip abroad. But I also practiced with some of my friends here that had already studied Mandarin, and some of the international students here at Center, because we have a great population of Chinese students. So I was practicing in that way, but also like reading the news and like reading news articles about the country and the region that I was going to be in, and comparing that to my own experiences in other countries and in big cities. So that's like linguistically, I was prepared for the challenge.
I think same. I did. I downloaded applications that like talked specifically about like Strasbourg and France. I remember like like downloading like news articles and stuff like that. I like just keeping up with news about like what was going on, like what neighboring countries were going through and things like that. And I also reached out to like professors who were like French speaking, and like just kind of asking them like, oh, like if I were to say this, what would happen? Or just like, like what are some basic things that I should know just navigating the area? And I think like I reached out to Center students, whether it was like upperclassmen or just like those who had graduated, who went to Strasbourg, because it is a very popular location. And they kind of like told me like, like save up this amount of money, or like, like have like these notes for this class or things like that. So they shared a lot of resources that I felt like prepared me when I was going.
Well, I didn't have to get any applications to learn languages in English, but I did as part of when we first like found out as a group that we were going to London. When we found out who got into the program and who didn't, the professors that were going with us like sat us down in our first big group meeting, and they told us they would like recommended items because one of our professors had been a director of in London before, and one of them hadn't. But together they'd come up with a list of things that we should keep our eye on. And personally, I found YouTube videos very, very helpful in that there were either it be people that have already studied abroad before and like things you should bring, things you make sure you don't forget when you study abroad. And then in terms of like learning the English culture, I guess, there's a bunch of YouTubers that were from like England or London or the area that would talk about like differences between England and America and those types of things. I just found those videos really, really interesting and fun to watch because I still watch some of them, even though I'm not going to London at the moment anytime soon. But I think it's fun to watch and see things that are going on, and then just look at it. Kind of gives you a glimpse into the world over there that you can kind of get a taste of it but you don't really understand it until you're there. But even then, it kind of like reassured me a little bit that like I wasn't coming into a place that I hadn't like really seen before at all. I would have an idea of what was going on in the area.
So as much as we can prepare as individuals, there are unforeseen challenges, things that are hard to anticipate ahead of time. So reflecting back, what kinds of challenges did you work through?
I can start. I think one of the challenges I had was that like when we got to Strasbourg, we were there for like we were there for 3 months, but then like within like the second month, I lost my debit card, and it was kind of like because like it was a hub where like you travel to nearby like European countries, and it was so fun. But then I realized like how dependent I was on my debit card, because like that is an advice that you're given. It's like like don't take a lot of money out because like you're going to use your debit card more. So then I realized that like once I lost it, and I have no idea where I lost it, so then like that was something where I had to kind of like tackle. Like I reached out to Sarah and I reached out to like my family members, just seeing like what I should do, and like they gave me like really like helpful advice on like like my mom was like, oh, did they have a MoneyGram? And then like she like sent me like some money or like through like Western Union. So then like that helped me to like kind of like sustain myself for like the 1 month that we were there. But I think that's something that I didn't anticipate. And like something I would say is like like having like 2 sources, I guess, like like having a debit card and a credit card, because like a lot of my friends like did bring a credit card for emergencies, and I didn't even think about that. Okay. And when that happened, I was like, wow, okay.
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Who else? Some other things you worked.
Well, just to tie into the money thing, that was one thing that happened to me a little bit at the beginning. Well, not so much in Greece, but I learned that it's important to pay attention to, because I did bring a debit card and a credit card, but to pay attention to the international like policies with the cards that you bring, and to make sure that you notify your bank if you're going, when you're in your credit card company, when you're going abroad. Because even though I did that when I went to London, it didn't have any problems when I was in Greece. But when I went to London, even though I did notify them, it was something on their end, didn't go through the system right. And when I used my debit card a couple times there, they flagged it, and my card got deactivated while I was in there. So then I was like, I don't know what to do. But it all worked out. There was just calls over here. The time difference is a little bit hard to work with, but calls over here got everything sorted out, and my credit card was fine. But one struggle that I was worried about when I was in Greece and happened to a friend of mine when I was in London was your passport, because it's not something that you have to worry about when you're here and home a lot, but when you're abroad, you have to have it on you if you travel. In Greece, I gotten a little passport pouch because like a classic tourist move. I was wearing it on me at all times. But in London, when we were living there, it's not something that that you can carry around with you 24/7. So I had it on me, but then a friend of mine, who was also a first-gen student actually, but she lost hers when we were traveling in Spain, and then it was a struggle to make sure you can't always be prepared in those types of situations, but to have a plan worked out of if you were in there, what would happen, who to call, and then just be like prepared that something like that could happen.
Know your resources.
Yeah.
So my struggles were a little bit more on like my connections back home. So there's a 12-hour difference between China and here on the eastern side of the U.S. So I usually spoke to my mom like really frequently, like every day if I could. And then because I had so much time dedicated to my academics and my internship, I struggled a lot trying to communicate back home because of the first the social media restrictions and other sorts of restrictions that China has. So you're not allowed to use Google, you're not allowed to use Facebook or Instagram. So I had to have a VPN if I wanted to do those things. And then also I was struggling a little bit with academics because the program in Shanghai is with a partner school in the city. So I was exposed to Chinese teachers and their style of teaching. So it completely contrasted my center experience. So I had to accommodate to the lecture-based and not having a study guide in like bigger classrooms. So that was my struggle and like academically, and then trying to communicate back home.
Well, one other struggle, I think, is trying to figure out a financial plan. How, depending on when you decide to go abroad, how much time you might have to kind of squirrel money away. How did you all financially plan, not just for your program fees, but all the indirect costs that, were hard to, again, anticipate without, I think you made a good point about connecting with people who'd been there. You mentioned earlier, figuring out how to save and what to take. Think about that for a little bit.
I think for me, it was a learn as you go situation. So I knew about the cost, about the initial cost of like applying to be abroad. So I was prepared for that. And then I also knew I had to pay for my plane ticket there and from, and then everything else would be covered. And then once I was there, the expenses in China aren't really that expensive. It's not as expensive as it is here in the US or in cities like New York. So I was better about that. But then along the way, I realized how much money I was spending, like eating out. So then I had to adjust and like start doing supermarket visit or shopping and learning to cook in my space. So it was a learn as you go, but definitely having restrictions on myself. Okay, you went out 4 times. I think it's time to spend the weekend at home, or vice versa. And also taking advantage of all the like touristy things that you can do, because you're, especially in a trip like China, I didn't foresee myself going there shortly after my trip there. So I wanted to take advantage of as much time as possible. So I knew that while I was there, we have a week-long break, and I wanted to take advantage of being in Asia to travel to Thailand. So I knew before that break, I had to save for that trip. So it's all about accommodating and adjusting and being flexible, especially when you have another group or a group of students that is experiencing some of the situations that you are. So you learn how to cook together and you bond with the students, the exchange, like we're exchange students there. So you can engage with the community there and see what other cuisines you can learn to take advantage of.
I think for me, it was kind of the same thing. Like I knew I like wanted to go to Strasbourg, and that like I wanted to like at least like be able to like explore Europe, because I had never been able to leave the US since I came here. But then like just like trying to plan ahead for like the Grissom scholarship, we do get like a certain stipend. So then I was like smart about that. I was like, okay, like how am I going to use my money? So like that helped to cover a few things. And then just like in terms of like my summer plans, I like adjusted that to where I was able to like work at a law firm just to save up some money, but then also like do something else that was like academic. So then like that helped me to have some cushion money just in case I was able, like I didn't want to like rely on my mom, because like I knew like she had a lot going on. And like once I got there, our program actually like helped us a lot with like and this is something that I would say like always like ask advice about, like, you know, what types of money or like support is provided when you get to that country, just because like we actually received a stipend through center, so then we would get like 170 euros like every like month, and then like just like trying to allocate that, or like, I think it was 200 euros, but then like trying to allocate that for like food and just like travels and things like that. Like that's something where like my I lived in an apartment with like 4 other center students, so then we would like put in 100, buy food, and just kind of like cook our food for the month. And then like we also travel together, so then like that helped to kind of lower expenses, and just in terms of like trying to travel to nearby countries. And I also, they have a lot of sales when you're going abroad. And so like I bought my train ticket ahead of time, like the Euro Pass, and it was like almost like $200 off when I bought it. So that was like really nice, because like generally it's like $500, and I bought it for $300, which saved me a lot, because then every time my friends were paying for like a ticket, which is like $100 each, I didn't have to pay. I just showed them my pass, and like you just basically enter in like, this weekend I'm traveling from this day to this day. And it was like such a nice thing, because then it kind of helped to like just kind of helped to take a lot of like the hassle things away, and just made like traveling fun, because then I didn't really have to worry about all these since I planned ahead.
Well, actually, I was with Dahavo a lot the spring before she left, so I got to see her planning ahead when she was buying that train ticket. I was there for that. But being in well, when I was going abroad, the one thing I was focused on was food, because I'm not the best cook, and I knew that going in. So I had anticipated I was gonna have to learn how to cook, and I was anticipating like maybe eating out a lot, but I didn't know yet for sure. But unlike some other places, London's fairly expensive to live in. And then even when we were there, they told us that Center gave us a stipend when we went, but they didn't tell us how much it was until we got there. Well, no, that's not true. They told us the week before, but we didn't understand the how far it was going to last us until we really got there and got in it. And we would talk with people who were other students that were abroad at the same time we were, that were in Strasbourg when we were in London, and saw how they were doing it. And one thing that I didn't think about until I got there, because I live in Harrodsburg and it's a small city, and there's not really public transportation like around here. That was something that I didn't really think about in terms of like London, where you get on the tube to get anywhere. You can be on the tube for 45 minutes and still be in London, like not stopping. So it's just a big city. But that was kind of paid, like we got our stipend money kind of went towards that too, while it also went for us buying food. That the public transportation was a big part of it. And then we were there, that money went by really fast. So we had to like plan how, if like we were going to take the tube to a place, or we were going to make the 45-minute walk, or which we did a lot more than not. But kind of that, and looking at before I left, the scholarship that our Gerson scholarship, that stipend, planning how I was going to use that money to buy my like initial plane ticket to get over there. And then I didn't think I was going to travel a lot once I was there, but I did travel to Spain, and then within the United Kingdom a little bit. But just after I got there and saw realized that that's what I wanted to do, then I had to think, I had to watch what I was spending, and then realized like by spring break, a lot of people went to Italy for spring break, and then I was like, I travel a lot and a lot with my money. I don't think that I could really swing that right now. And then even then, like looking at the taking advantage of the little things that you don't think of when you're here, that turn out to be really big things when you're in some place that you haven't ever been before. Like either seeing the touristy things in London, or just seeing the parks that they have in London. That's something that, like, I'm not going to be in London for a little bit, but making sure you take advantage of those small things when you're there too.
Center is a community where global citizenship is just kind of ingrained, and it's built into a lot of our planning here. So I think all three of these students might echo that there's like a nice process laid out for students to go through to make these study abroad programs a reality. Now, that may not be the case at every institution, where there are a few more steps students have to explore. So as you think about how you were preparing and planning, who were some key players in staff roles? I assume you had some conversations with academic advisors, maybe someone in the Office of Financial Aid, career development. You mentioned an internship. Think about how you connected and what are important conversations to have prior to going abroad.
I think like going to the study abroad office is such an essential thing to do. That's something that I did for like my long-term 3-month trip. And like I went there and I was just talking to them about like financially, like it would this, like I don't want this to be tasking again on my mom. So like what should I do? And they were like really helpful about like talking to me about the scholarships that were available through center and like private donors. And that's something that I like took advantage of, just like seeing. I applied to like a few of the scholarships because they have like scholarships based on like if you're a first gen, scholarships on like if you live in like a certain place and things like that. So then like that helped me a lot because that I used that scholarship to cover my flight, and that was like really nice because flights to Europe are more expensive. So I think like just like being in that office and like allowing them to like know your face, know your situation, so that they could truly like give you like a holistic kind of like take on like if this would be feasible for you and like what you should do, or also like if you should postpone it and things like that, because they were really like just like upfront with me about, oh, like I think you should do this and like maybe look into this or talk to this professor or things like that. So like they helped me they pointed me in the directions that I needed to go to. So.
And you mentioned our academic advisors, and I think my academic advisor was a key factor in both of my study abroad experiences, because even though coming into center is a big study abroad, like big thing in center, but coming in, that wasn't something that was on my radar because, like I said before, I'd never been on a plane before, so that kind of never had factored into when I was coming here. But once I got here, my academic advisor, she like as a math computer science, it's kind of hard to go. It's typically kind of hard to go abroad and still have those focuses worked into what you're doing when you're abroad. But in both of the programs that I was in, math was ingrained in both of them. In Greece, we did the old math concepts in Greece. But I wouldn't have been aware about that if she hadn't have pointed me in that specific direction. Like, I think you might be looking into this. Of course, young me, I was skeptical because I had never been on a plane, but then I was like looking into it, and then I thought it sounded really interesting. So I did that one. And then my academic advisor turned out to be one of the directors, the new directors in the London program that semester. So then she put that one on my radar too. And then I was like, that is really something I've always, London's a great place. I've always wanted to go to that. So she was the factor in both of those and pointing me even to look at the study abroad experience in itself. And then knowing that I can work that into my majors and not have to worry about falling behind or something, because I know that's a lot of the struggle on a lot of people's minds is they don't think they can study abroad because they don't think they'll graduate on time when they're supposed to, or they don't think they can fit into their schedules. But knowing that it was going to work out for both, and it might even I took a course in London, a math course that plays into my major, knowing that you can take courses abroad that would still count towards your major was like a really big plus.
For me, it was the director of the program. So the program that works with center, it's independent, I think. But maybe you can speak a little bit more.
We do it in kind of an exchange fashion.
Yeah. So the director of the China program, unlike the programs in Europe, was not not a faculty or faculty member here at Center. So he had more experience on the China front, and in communicating with him, I shared a lot of my passions and interests professionally, and he was able to connect me with the internship that I did regarding homelessness in China. So I think engaging with all these components is important to make sure that you take full advantage of your time abroad and make yourself a competitive applicant when you are pursuing a job opportunity or higher education.
Brittany, is it time to move on to field some questions from those that have joined us this afternoon?
Yes, let's do it. We have a question from Nina. How has this experience impacted students' mindset of themselves as a part of a global community?
I think it's truly impacted me a lot. I've always imagined, I've always wanted to be a part of this globalizing community, And for me, like that wasn't possible at first, just because like I didn't have a passport. I wasn't even a U.S. citizen. But then coming to center and like get it, like the kind of like these two things happening simultaneously, where like I came to center and I became a citizen, it truly opened up a lot of things for me. Where like I was able to travel, I was able to like see how people were dealing with like human rights issues, how they were just dealing with like being like a person of color at a different place and things like that. Like it helped me to understand so much of the similarities we have and still like appreciate a lot of the differences too.
For me, my time in China dispelled some of the stereotypes and misconceptions I had about China as a relatively homogenous place. And being in having the opportunity to travel even within China, I realized how much of my like misconceptions were really misconceptions. And then having the opportunity to engage with a community that was so close to some of the students here at Center's campus made me relate more to the international community and relate even here at Center, talking with international students and being able to know what they're talking about China, about Shanghai, about food, about language. So it kind of, like Dahabo mentioned, facilitates this community that seems relatively far away, but in reality is really, really close.
And for me, like I said before, travel on that scale was not something that was on my mind at all. But going abroad kind of made it seem doable for me because now if I plan right, I can do everything. Like one day I'll be able to go back to London, and then being able to live, like have the opportunity to live in like a big city, in that city specifically, like having like not a second home, but like I was living in that city for two months, and then being able to, while I was there, I took a politics class, and it was during Brexit and everything that was going on in London. And politics classes like here, as a math computer science major, that's not something that I have a lot of experience with. But even that class in itself was really really impactful for me because it allowed me to become really engaged in what was going on within like the government in London, everything that was going on there. And even coming back now, for that class, we had to pay attention to headlines and everything that was going on because big things were happening when we were there. So we would always look at headlines and come to class and discuss it. So even now, I'm still tied into all the headlines and sources that I used when I was there. So I'll get notifications about when something happens in London, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like our politics professor who was from London would say it was like a drama that was unfolding. And then now I'm still participating in that, even though I'm here, even though I'm not living in it anymore. I still have my eye on what's going on.
I will add as a staff member that one of my greatest joys is watching these students maneuver through their college experience. And when a student goes abroad and they return to your campus, there's kind of this confidence and sense of adventure that I think is really nurtured. And so they will have more confidence to walk into the career development office and say, you know what, I'm really interested in maybe my first professional job being abroad. How can you help me start exploring those options? So I think there's an immediate, there's gratification and there's some immediate growth, but I think it just changes their mindset of what they can and what they will do and how they'll impact the world years down the road. So I think that's just really rewarding, and it's for me really, really great to watch unfold.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions, 3 questions in our queue. We have a question from Mariana. What cultural norms abroad did you have to adjust to that were different from life in the U.S.?
Ooh, I can think of so many. So I mentioned earlier that I'm from Brooklyn, and there in the space so big, staring at one another is really like a sign. It's a threatening, like it's threatening to do. And in China, being a person of color, Dahabo mentioned this earlier, but because we're obviously not from, like the students here from the U.S. are obviously not Chinese, even if you speak Mandarin and you can pass for Asian, your language tells a lot about you and your physicality tells a lot. So for me, obviously I don't look Chinese or Asian. So people would stare at me, and I felt like that was really threatening, and I didn't like it. But part of the program is to enhance your intercultural competency. So being able to recognize that this was a cultural norm that obviously wasn't didn't feel safe at first to me. Talking with my friends about it, talking with the staff, the support systems that we had abroad, I was able to kind of challenge myself in thinking about how different a culture can be. And when I went abroad, I studied sociology too. So I was able to kind of implement what I was learning in the classroom about the values and the norms of China to the actual lived experience. So I think that was, it not only challenged me, but it also helped me grow, like Pam mentioned earlier. So that was a turbulent time for me, but I think I overcame it.
I think mine's like similar to yours, where like nonverbal communication was something that I really struggled with. Like being someone who, like in the US, like if you're like looking at someone and like you smile at them, like, you know, there's like this sense of like friendliness. And like, well, in Strasbourg and like almost all over Europe, like nobody would like acknowledge you. Like nobody would like, you know, like look at you. And if you like smile at someone, like some people found it offensive, and others were like, oh, like, you know, like, wow, this is the first person who's kind of smiled at me, so let me like engage. Like they would like cross boundaries. And for me, that was something where I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm just the type of person who like I'll smile, even if I'm not like, looking at someone, like I'll just be smiling as I'm walking down the street or something like that. And I've had like numerous incidents where like, and it was normally like men who like you would smile at them and like they would like, oh, like, are you interested in me? Like, you know, like where's this going? And I was like, it was a smile, like, oh my God. So then like that was something like I had to like acknowledge and just kind of like come to terms with, was that like, and it wasn't like a sense of disrespect or anything. That was just how the norm was. Like body language, like especially in terms of like smiling and things like that, were just not the norm there. So then like that was something for me to like get used to, where like as I'm crossing the street or things like that, like I just had to come to terms with that. Like, you know, people won't like look at you, and that's just their way of like, you know, trying to like hold on to their boundaries and like their kind of like sense of like individualism and things like that. But at first it was like really hard to navigate.
Mine kind of come from I've got two kind of fields. One field's kind of might be more of a consequence of me being from a small town in Kentucky, but and then going to a big city, it was the like girls was nonverbal. But one thing I loved to do when I was walking the streets of London was to
I know you did it.
when I was walking in London was to just listen to all the different both the different languages that were being spoken within London, and as well the different accents of even English within London. That was one of my favorite things to do. And then I don't get to do it that a lot here. Yes, you have different like Kentucky accents and maybe a New York lingo or not, but that was a big thing. And then like I mentioned before, public transportation and everything still might just be a consequence of me not growing up with that, but that was something that took me a lot to get used to. But on the finer details, one thing that was took me a minute to get used to when I was over there was the food distinctions. Because it's something really specific, but like the ketchup that they use in London, I could taste the difference. And the small little things like that, like they didn't have grape flavored grape jelly, grape candy, they didn't have grape anything. But those small little things were things that we would always pick out in terms of like things you don't even think of when you're here. Go to the store to look for, or they're just not going to be there. Or even the things we have here, but are labeled something different over there.
No ice and drinks.
Yes. Oh yeah, the ice and drinks, and
gosh.
paying for a big thing is paying for your drinks when you go out, water or even like soda, because they're trying to phase out sugar over there, which is a big thing, a big difference between there and here. But like paying that, like there's a sugar tax on stuff in London that when I was calling home and telling people home, like there was a thing of Oreos at an American store there that was like 15 pounds compared to here. And then nobody here could believe that a package of Oreos that you can get for like $4 at Walmart was so expensive over there. But that was a big thing that I found interesting over there.
Thanks, team. All right, our next question is from Kevin. We take a lot of our students on regional college tours, but I have found that my parents typically do not allow travel. Any insights on how I may be able to reach parents or help them feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I think that's something that I dealt with because, like, my mom, like, I come from a community where, like, education, like, hasn't always been the norm. So, like, as my mom has become comfortable with, like, the American sense of, like, access to an education and just, like, the fact that, like, women could have access to an education, like, that was something where, like, even for her, like, just, like, me applying to center, she was very, like, okay, like, I don't know. And, like, she was just kind of hesitant about, like, what could this mean? But I think, like, just, like, showing them that this has a positive impact for their students, and like if you could share like personal anecdotes from like maybe people in the community, because then like that brings it closer to home, or just like even like others, like like that have that same personality or like just that same identity that they do. Like if you could find YouTube videos of like someone who went to college and like just like the prosperity that they've had, I think that would make a huge impact for these families, just to kind of understand that this isn't something that should be scrutinized, and it isn't something that's gonna like divide the family. I think for so many communities that come from a more like close knit type of community, it is seen as a very like hostile environment or like a hostile situation. But I think just like kind of moving that conversation to this isn't threatening and it could have a huge impact for your child, especially as like our society moves towards like an education playing such a crucial role in like the jobs that you have and you being able to provide for your family.
Well, with mine, with my family, everyone being from Harrodsburg, all my family's in Harrodsburg. So then, like having one of us go such a far distance was a really like out of the box kind of concept. But my mom my mom herself she already said that she wanted me to do everything that I wanted to do. So if it was something I wanted to do, then she would do it, or she would like help me do it. So with Greece, with it being my first time on a plane, I talked to her about it and said, "Do you think I should do it?" And she knew she was going to worry about me, but she wasn't going to tell me no. But so we kind of took that one upon us, and then we didn't. Not to say that you should do this, but we kept it low key in terms of the rest of the family. Which it was my mom that knew that I was out and about in Greece, but like we just said it, I was going on a trip and then a small trip and for the 3 week short term that worked out, and then that kind of a small taste of me going abroad. I knew that if I liked it, then it would play into me being more open and accepted to me going for 2 months or 3 months when I went. If I at that time I wasn't sure that I was going to London or not, but if I decided I wanted to go and Greece had worked out nicely, then I knew like that would play a factor into it. So maybe showing kind of plays into showing that it can be good for you to do an experience like that, which I don't know how other people, that was really specific to my case specifically, but just that idea of getting a taste and then showing that it'll be okay in the end. Yes.
And I'm going to just,
I was just going to say, I would also recommend, like, I know there are faculty and staff members on this campus that have had the good fortune to be campus directors at a lot of our different abroad programs. And I think getting parents connected with other faculty and staff members who kind of understand what family members might be feeling from safety concern perspective, or if my student has appendicitis while they're in Strasbourg, France, who's going to care for my child? So I think there are key people that colleges can find and offer as resources to connect with parents. I think there can be a lot of comfort in that.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to fit in this last question here from Raven. She wanted to ask, when do you think is the best time for students to study abroad? Do you think it's best suited for certain majors or students who are more into exploring options?
I think there's benefit for everyone, especially if you don't feel prepared, putting yourself out there and being brave and expanding your comfort zone is beneficial even for your beyond your professional goal, your professional development. It also supports your campus, like Pam mentioned earlier, being more engaged and having your friends see that encourages more engagement on everyone's part. In terms of when to go abroad, Dahabo mentioned this earlier, but I think after getting a feel for campus life and your academics, maybe after your second year, or even maybe if you're ready for it after your first year here at college, it just gives you the opportunity to engage more with your academics here and get a feel for what you're interested in, and then have that apply to what you do abroad. So you gain from it from two different spheres.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should like forfeit the opportunity to be able to go abroad. I know a lot of students who are just like, oh, like it might not work with my major and things like that. But I think like honestly trying to go all the way to figure out if this truly works for you, just because like the opportunity to go abroad brings so many it opens so many doors that I feel like if you forfeit it and later regret it, like that's not something you could easily go back and change. But like let's say like you go abroad and then you figure like, you know, like okay, you don't want to work abroad, or like you don't you appreciated the experience, but like that's not something for you, then I think like it's better to have that outcome than to have something where like you regret it later on, but then you're not able to do much about it. Because I know like with students, especially like with students who come from backgrounds of like being like first generations or like being like from impoverished families, it is such a good time to take advantage of like being in college where you have that support, and where it is just kind of like, you know, like everybody's doing it, so like your school is going to want to help you, your school is always there for you. But I think later on when you're on your own, there's going to be more of a burden or more of like more obstacles for you to go. So it's, I think it's always better to take that chance and to be able to like explore and see the world.
And like Drew mentioned earlier, he wasn't really familiar with traveling abroad. So maybe starting off small and then building up. But also, even just getting out of your comfort zone, like if you can't study abroad for whatever reason, maybe a study away program where you can travel domestically and spend some time in a different part of the US where you weren't familiar with, or it's totally different from what you grew up in, challenges you in that way too.
Thank you, team. All right, so we are close to close here at the top of the hour. Pam, I am going to lead into outro, but I just wanted to bring attention to the webinar materials that you put together, the handouts. Can you just share a little bit more about that?
We have offered just some information about Center to you. We're happy to connect with you in any way that's good for you and your students. Also, we have offered some tips on how students get started with planning, considering, and implementing a study abroad program during their college years. So excited for you to take full advantage of either or both of those materials.
And thank you, team. All right, so we're going to lead outro here. Taking a look at my slides, we have an upcoming online event. If you all love this presentation today, you will definitely love our online college block party. This is open to counselors, parents, and all high school students. This is an online event. We are inviting Stanford, Northwestern, Colgate, Rice, Tufts, and Vanderbilt to lead long workshops around college applications, support services, campus diversity, essay assistance, and we want to celebrate our community of students transitioning to college or just dipping their toe and really understanding how to prepare for college. So I will be following up with you all with a link to register. As I mentioned, it is free. We are going to be live Wednesday the 16th and Thursday the 17th. These are drop-in days, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. So drop in if you all are able to make it, or if you just want to have access to the information, you can also do that as well. And then please promote your college events. Do you have any fairs or events that you would like colleges like Center to join? Please complete this form here, and we will make sure to share that with our 200 college partner community. All right, and last but not least, please, everyone, let us know if you need any assistance with getting started with College Greenlight. And I am going to have our panel, any parting words that you would like to share?
I think being a first gen is such a unique experience, especially for students who are like doing just like the search process and everything on their own. I definitely think reaching out to mentors, reaching out to counselors, just like making sure that you have that support system, or like if you know that there's a student who's going through these stuff, but like they're facing cultural difficulties or just like any other things, I think it's so important to still push them to like go beyond, because it being a first gen in college, like it is a scary experience. And I know like for parents and for like that student, like just like that financial burden, that emotional burden, but I think the outcome is what they'll appreciate it. So like being that source of just support for students and parents, it's something that's so amazing. And I'm thankful that y'all are doing that every day for these students. So yeah, just to remind parents and students that it is a good thing.
I just want to add, again, from the staff side, I really feel like this is such a wonderful opportunity for students to really thrive and flourish. So I think encourage students to work through the barriers, make really well-informed decisions. It just pays dividends down the road. And I'm so proud of each of these individuals. And I feel like I get to live through them vicariously. I've been to London, but I've never been to Strasbourg, and I've not been to China. So I've learned a lot from their experiences. So, and I'm grateful they were able to spend this afternoon with us.